I'm back, and this video has been a long time coming. What's going on, guys? Blood Moon Bobby here. I am finally back after a sort of a week-long break. I was kind of feeling sick. Between me feeling sick and there weren't that many news topics that I really wanted to talk about. That's why I've been gone for a minute, I would say, or definitely longer than a minute. So today, this video is completely a followers request on Instagram. My former assistant social media editor from the newspaper I used to work at, Roberto Herrera. It's your shout out, dude. Hope you're doing good. I put up a post a couple weeks ago comparing my experiences, my first impressions using Premiere compared to Final Cut Pro, and he said he wanted me to compare the two software in video form. So we have that today. Little disclaimer, I've used Final Cut Pro for about a month, and I would say I definitely really liked it. It's kind of inconvenient if you use a lot of After Effects graphics, albeit, granted, I figured out a follow-through or a way around using the After Effects graphics, but overall it was that very nifty software. A lot of people call it iMovie Pro. It was definitely a lot more capable than that description may seem it to be. You know, there was definitely a lot of color correction tools. I kind of wish it had some more audio editing tools, but I didn't get a chance to really play around with them much. That's why over the last month, if you saw, there was a lot of weird cuts in my videos. That was because the way I was basically just cutting out the parts of the video where I wanted to put like a lower third or an After Effects graphic, dropping that into After Effects, putting the graphics in, and then bringing it back to Final Cut. But I do know of a workaround around that, but since I can't use Final Cut anymore, or because I use the 30-day trial version, I'm unable to test that. But anyway, let's get into the basics of the difference between these two softwares. For my millionth disclaimer, keep in mind this is not a video series about me teaching you guys how to edit using these two programs, since that'll be a video for another time if you guys want me to make it. But so it's really just comparing the simple differences, not the super technical stuff, but the kind of things you may notice the first time editing with either software. So we'll get started talking about the compatibility, and that is because and this may be a deal breaker for a lot of people, and I know because I used to be a full-time PC user, you guys may know, in my early days, and that is Premiere Pro works on both Mac and PC, while Final Cut Pro only works on Mac, which is kind of a bummer to me because I really wish Apple made more of their software PC compatible, which I know it's Apple. They want to keep as much of their software aside from QuickTime and iTunes in the Mac ecosystem so that people will have no choice but to buy Mac. Maybe an interesting thing I should point out, when I was looking through jobs recently on LinkedIn, I noticed there was a job listing where they asked for somebody that knew how to use Premiere, Final Cut, and DaVinci Resolve, which DaVinci Resolve is a color grading program. So video editors out there, you may want to keep an eye out there, especially for PC users who don't have a Mac or don't use them. You may want to keep that in mind, that some jobs out there want you guys to use both Final Cut and Premiere. It's kind of head scratching to me because I really wish it would just be one or the other, but I'm sure there's situations where a client exclusively uses Final Cut, so maybe that's why they want somebody who's well versed in both. So just keep that in mind. Just remember, Premiere works on PCs and Mac. Final Cut only works on Mac. So just keep that in mind. Going to the next one, and that is how do you import footage into both softwares. So got a couple files here from a recent video I worked on. On one of the ways you could do it, this is the way that works best for me. There's other ways, but my habit is I often just open a folder and drag the videos right into Premiere or Final Cut. In this case, we're working with Premiere, so what I do is I drag it into the project panel. As you can see here, it says the word project. And this is also the place where you'll be putting in your audio files or any pictures or intros or any other graphics. So let's say I needed to import these two audio files, so that's how you would do it on Premiere. For Final Cut, the way you do it in Final Cut is very, very similar to iMovie, and that's one thing that I'll give is that if you're coming from a super beginner background and maybe video editing isn't your best strength, I would actually say that Final Cut may be the software that's easier to get it used to. Premiere, there's some hoops you gotta jump through in order to get through it. You know, it's not as simple as just going from Windows Movie Maker or iMovie and then Premiere. Like, no, it's not that simple. Oh, and I'll show you in a minute why. But for purposes of this demonstration, you drag and drop files into Final Cut. Just pretend that I'm using iMovie as if it were Final Cut. But you drag and drop files into Final Cut just like you would with iMovie. So you just drag them in. And how you drop footage into the timeline is actually a little bit different for each program. So I think most people are used to just dragging and dropping the clips. Let's actually go one at a time. So you would just click on the clip and then just drag it in. Because I used to do this a lot in Windows Movie Maker. You know, you would just trim the beginning and end as you like so. You do also have this ability, I didn't find this out until recently, where you can drag the beginning and ending points in iMovie or Final Cut just like this. So, yeah. Whereas in Premiere, the way you do it is actually quite a bit different. This is the part that I think may take a lot of getting used to. Is in Premiere, the way you do it is you go to the beginning point of the video you want to select and you hit I, and then you go to the end point and you hit O. So you go to the beginning, you press I to select your beginning point, and then you go to your end point and select O to choose the ending of your clip. Another thing I should really point out, you notice how when I was using iMovie, I was simply able to drag and drop the footage into the timeline. In Premiere, you could also do this, but the more professional way, since you're working with an entire project, is to set up an entire project based on what we call a sequence. So in a sequence, if you're just starting off, what I basically recommend is the basic 1080p settings. I'll show it to you guys again. The way you get to it is you go to this new item menu. It kind of looks like a sticky note. You click new item, select sequence. You go over to the digital SLR folder and click on the triangle, and then you click the triangle on the 1080p folder, and then you select, in this case I'm going to pick 1080p 24 frames per second, and voila, there you go. And back to what I was saying about the in and out points, you can then go back to your footage, and when you drop the footage into Premiere, you'll notice that it didn't take in the whole footage. It just took in the parts that we selected down here, as you can see. So I think that's definitely one of the features I think a lot of people are going to have to get used to in Premiere, is that you have to use this source window. You do have the option of dragging entire clips, just like you can in iMovie, but the problem is if you want to say, if you wanted to, let's say, drag a clip in between, because the way it works in iMovie, let me actually see if I can get another clip to demonstrate what I'm talking about. You know, because in Final Cut, if you just take your video file and drag it in between or in files, what will happen is the other clip will move out of the way, and you've got your clip inserted. Whereas in Premiere, if you try doing that, what happens is and this was a really big shocker to me when I first started using Premiere a while back, is that it deletes the footage. So it's probably best just to stick with that in-out method I showed you guys. I'll demonstrate it to you again. You go to you double click the footage you want to use, and then you go to the part of the video where you want to start, and you press I, and you go to the part you want the clip to end, and you press O, and then you click and drag from this drag video only icon. It looks like a film strip for your video, and then for audio you click and drag the waveform and then drop it into the timeline. So that's one feature you guys are going to have to get used to if you're going to be moving into Premiere. The other thing, if you guys record video and audio separately, is that syncing your audio is really different. Now, for syncing audio, I actually recommend inserting the entire clip just so Premiere knows the how long your video and audio are. So what you would do in Premiere is you drag in the video you want to use and then the audio you recorded on its own, and then you click and drag both, and then you right click on one of the audio waveforms, comes up, hit synchronize, be sure to click this audio button, click OK, and it should synchronize. Yeah, just like that. And if you guys are familiar with the clap method, that's what you do to get your reference point. What you can do is after your video sync is you can delete your camera's audio because you'll be using your recorder's audio instead. So you click the lock button here on the video just so you don't end up accidentally deleting your video clip. And then you click your camera audio here. It's usually listed in the A1 section. Click delete. And then unlock the video layer. And there you go. You can actually go as far as to get rid of those claps in the beginning. Just so your viewers don't have to see that. So yeah. There you go. That's syncing audio in Premiere. In Final Cut, the way it works, this is not how it works in iMovie, but if you were using Final Cut, the way it works is you drag your video and audio clip, or you can click on them both. I'll actually demonstrate them again. You drag them, and then in Final Cut, when you right-click, you'll have the option to select Synchronize Clips. And the nice thing about Final Cut is you don't have to delete the camera audio like I just showed you in Premiere. The audio that Final Cut uses will be the one that comes from your external microphone. So, yeah, that's one of the nicer conveniences of Final Cut. The next thing I wanted to talk about is After Effects compatibility, because I know After Effects I know Apple has their own graphic titling software called Motion, but I think a lot more people are familiar with After Effects. That's the software that lets me put in all these funky graphics, like the lower thirds you've been seeing in this video, and if you guys watch my product videos, like when I talk about new cameras and smartphones, you'll often notice there are times where I show this entire colorful spec sheet, like the one you're seeing where I tell you guys, oh, this cell phone has this processor, this camera has a 36 megapixel sensor. That kind of animation was all created in After Effects. And I know when I was working at my college's newspaper, we used to give the students, or more so everybody that made videos, After Effects videos, so that they could put in lower thirds to say who made this video, or putting in any other details in the video. Like if they were making a video on a campus crime, they might have a lower third that says so-and-so was described as the suspect. He was wearing this shirt and this certain baseball cap and things like that. The thing I gotta point out here is that Premiere Pro is generally much more friendly to After Effects graphics. What I mean is that you could literally just drag and drop an After Effects graphic. So if, let's say, your video editor comes to you and says, hey, be sure to put in a lower thirds graphic saying, and you know what your name is, what your major is, if you're in college doing this. I'm gonna drag in the lower thirds I use for my own videos. So the way it works is you just drag and drop. It's not quite as simple as dragging in a video file, only because you have to tell Premiere which After Effects sequence you want to use from that file, or composition I should say. Like they'll ask you which composition you want to use for your video. That is going to be up to your video editor to tell you, since I don't know all the video editors in the world. So in this case, when it comes up, it could take a while to... While it's loading, I should point out to you guys, if you want to get into really hardcore video editing later down the line, like if you want to do things like color grading especially, I highly recommend getting a laptop with what we call a discrete graphics card. And to put it into like very basic terms, that basically means that if you look at your computer and it has a sticker that says AMD graphics or NVIDIA graphics, that usually means that your computer has discrete graphics, and you're going to need that to do color grading. Which, again, since this video isn't necessarily me teaching you guys super advanced, there we go, video editing, I'm not going to show you guys how I do color grading and color correction here. That's a video for another time if you guys want it. But anyway, just select the composition you're told to use, click OK, and then you can just drag in the graphic here. Be sure when you drag it in to Premiere, you make sure that you don't accidentally cut out the audio. Like if I drag and drop my After Effects footage here, it'll get rid of the audio just like I showed you earlier. So just be sure, use another layer like that, and then you go over. In this case, you may put something like your name, so I guess I'll type my name here. Yeah, you could see, and boy do I look stupid. But that's basically what I meant when I said with the After Effects graphics. In Final Cut, you have to convert your project to what's called an XML file, which is really simple. Well, again, I can't really show you guys that because I don't have Final Cut on my computer anymore, but basically it works kind of like this. In Final Cut, there's an option to convert your file into what's called an XML format, so be sure to go into the file menu and look into that if you have to use lower thirds for your videos. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be using Final Cut, you have to convert your entire project into that XML format I just told you about. If you're using strictly Premiere, then it should work just as I showed you. You should be able to simply just drag and drop, because you can't drag and drop After Effects graphics right into Final Cut. And the last thing I wanted to tell you guys about, this one for me is kind of a head scratcher because I read up on tips on this, but even when I followed them, it didn't work out for me. And that is Premiere Pro files. The project files in particular tend to be much, much smaller than the Final Cut project files. And what I mean by that is if you go into, let's see, which project was I working on? Let's just say my Paul Allen video. You go into the date modified or the list settings. You'll notice that my Paul Allen project, even though it's got, you know, video file, an audio file, and some pictures in it, the project file itself was only 51 kilobytes. Where if you're using Final Cut, at least in my experience, I noticed that the project files tend to be many gigabytes worth of footage, and I think the problem is that what Final Cut does is, unlike Premiere where it just locates all the footage on your computer, what Final Cut does is it'll literally copy all the video and audio clips that your project has. So I think that's a bit of an inconvenience, because you'll probably... What'll end up happening is that your project, if you decide to go down the Final Cut road, or you have no choice but to use Final Cut. The issue is that soon your hard drive is going to get filled with project files. So I'm not really sure what the solution is. I tried following some steps, but my Final Cut project files were still gigabytes upon gigabyte. They were just really, really large and just really ridiculous. But the basic gist of what I'm saying is that Premiere Pro project files are much, much smaller than Final Cut Pro files. So if you guys know a workaround about how you can get Final Cut Pro files to be a lot smaller, please let me know in the comments below. But in either case, I highly recommend you guys get an external hard drive, because when you start getting a ton of projects, they're going to really start adding up on your computer. Even if you're just doing this for a class, I still recommend an external hard drive anyway, just in case. If your computer breaks, you're basically screwed. Whereas if you have an external hard drive, you can just plug it into your new computer. It kind of looks like this. You can get these for around $50 to $100. But if your computer breaks and all your videos and other content are on this instead of on your computer's hard drive, then all you have to do is just take this external hard drive and plug it into your new computer if your old one breaks. So it's a really nice saving grace to have no matter what you're doing. So I highly recommend getting an external hard drive. So aside from that, these are basically the 5 main differences between using Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro. I know this video was kind of talky, but I hope you guys basically get a very basic understanding of what's going on. So once again, Premiere Pro does work on both Macs and PCs, whereas Final Cut Pro only works on Macs. In terms of the importing footage, I showed you guys that you could simply just drag and drop footage into iMovie, whereas in Premiere Pro you have to in order to do really smooth editing, you have to use the source monitor and select the in and out points as I showed you. Remember pressing the I key for the place you want to start and pressing the O key when you want the footage to end, or where you want the footage to end. And we also talked about syncing audio and After Effects compatibility and project sizes. Again, Premiere Pro project sizes tend to be much smaller than Final Cut Pro project sizes. So you really can't go wrong with either video editing program. It's more of a matter of personal preference, I think. If video editing isn't really your thing and you're more used to using iMovie or Windows Movie Maker then I highly recommend Final Cut Pro. The other thing I should mention is that Final Cut Pro, one of the nice things about it is it does what they call background rendering, which basically, it works on putting the video together while you're editing the video, whereas in Premiere, it does all that when you're finished. So that's the other thing. In Final Cut, rendering videos tends to take a lot less time, so that's another thing you should probably consider. So if ease of use is really on your mind, then I highly recommend using Final Cut. But if you want to get into some more advanced editing, you want to have smaller file sizes, and you want to be able to use the program on both Mac and PC, then I highly recommend going down the Premiere Pro route. And if you decide to pursue a career in video editing or make that one of your first jobs or even your second job, just keep in mind that you may have to be well trained in both programs. And from a person who's been using Premiere Pro for the last few years, I was able to adapt to Final Cut pretty easily, except for the After Effects parts. That's another reason to use Premiere, is that After Effects graphics are more seamless in Premiere, they're more compatible with Premiere than they are in Final Cut Pro. Oh, but you can't go wrong with either editing program. So I hope this video was helpful to you. I know this was really wordy, so if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. I'd love to help you guys down in the comments. I'll respond as soon as I can. And so this has been Blood Moon Bobby. If you have any ideas for future videos, or if you guys want me to show you anything in photography or video or graphic design editing in Photoshop, Premiere, Lightroom, or After Effects, please feel free to let me know in the comments, or you can also email me with ideas. My email address is in the description of this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all later. Hey guys, be sure to like this Blood Moon Bobby video if you enjoyed it. Please share this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. Be sure to ring the notification bell to be notified about my latest upload. Follow me on my social media pages at Blood Moon Bobby to find out about what I'll be covering next and for more of my opinions. Thanks for watching.